Beneath the restless waters of the North Sea lies a memory, a land forgotten by time. Not a city, not a kingdom, but something larger, more alive, and more enduring. It was once a vast plain of forests and rivers, a bridge that bound Britain to Europe, a place where life flourished in abundance. Today, waves sweep endlessly across it, concealing the valleys, the meadows, and the quiet traces of human hands. But if you listen closely, if you close your eyes and drift into the silence, you can almost hear it. The murmur of streams, the rustle of grasses, the distant call of deer. This is Doggerland, a world lost beneath the tide. Fishermen sometimes draw pieces of this memory from the sea. A fragment of bone, smooth with age. A tusk of mammoth, curved like the arc of the moon. A flint tool, once held in the hands of a hunter who lived and died long before our time. Each object is a whisper, a voice carried across 10,000 years, reminding us that the sea has hidden a land that was once alive with footsteps, firelight, and stories. Imagine standing there, not on the shore of England or Denmark, but on the plain that joined them. The horizon stretches wide and unbroken. Rivers shine like silver threads as they wind across the land. Forests rise in dark clusters, their branches whispering in the wind. Marshes lie quiet in the low places, where water gathers and reeds sway. Overhead, the sky is open, unbroken by cities or towers, only the endless flight of birds. It is a world both strange and familiar, a place where animals we know walk beside animals we can only imagine. Mammoths roam the grasslands, massive forms draped in thick coats of hair, their tusks sweeping in graceful arcs. They move slowly, their footsteps steady, leaving deep impressions in the soft earth. Reindeer migrate in vast herds, their antlers like forests moving against the horizon. Bison graze in open fields, while wolves stalk silently through the brush. In the rivers, fish shimmer in the current, and along the banks, beavers build their dams, reshaping the flow of water. Above it all, birds fill the sky, their wings flashing in the light. Life here is rich, layered, unending. And among the animals, people walk. They are small groups, families and bands of hunter-gatherers, carrying with them only what they need. Their tools are simple but skillful. Flint blades napped sharp, bone needles polished smooth, spears hardened in fire. They know the land intimately. They follow the paths of herds. They track the seasons of berries and nuts. They fish in the rivers and set snares in the forest. Their fires burn against the dusk, sending smoke into the open sky. Their voices carry across the plain, low and quiet, blending with the sounds of the earth around them. To these people, Doggerland is not mysterious. It is simply home, a place of abundance, of safety, of continuity. Children learn to walk along its meadows. Hunters carve stories into the memory of fire. Families move with the turning of seasons, returning to the same rivers, the same groves, the same sheltering hills. They do not imagine that their land will one day vanish, drowned beneath waves. They do not see the sea as a threat. It lies far away, at the edges of the world, a boundary to their plain. For them, Doggerland is eternal. But the land is not eternal. It is already changing. Far to the north, Glaciers that once held the world in their grip are melting. Their waters run into rivers, into lakes, into seas that creep ever higher. The ice retreats, and with it, the earth reshapes. To the people of Doggerland, the changes are subtle. A marsh grows deeper, a river shifts its path, a low valley floods where once the grass grew thick, yet the changes never stop. Each season brings a little more water, a little more land lost. It is the beginning of an ending, though no one can yet see it. Still, life continues. Imagine walking across Doggerland on a day in late spring. The sun is soft, the ground damp beneath your feet. Flowers scatter the meadows, pale blues and yellows bending in the breeze. A herd of red deer grazes in the distance, heads lifting when the wind changes. By the river, people sit together, weaving baskets, chipping flint, mending nets. Children run at the edge of the water, their laughter rising like bird song. The air smells of wood smoke, of earth, of water warmed in the sun. Everything feels unshakable, as though the land will remain forever. And yet, even in this peace, the sea is waiting. The tides inch forward year by year, slow but unstoppable. What seems eternal is already slipping away. One day, the rivers will not lead to plains, but to inlets and bays. One day, the forests will stand half submerged, their roots drowning in salt water. One day, the fire pits will be buried beneath sand, sealed in silence beneath the waves. The people cannot know this, but we do. We can see the shape of time stretching behind us, carrying Doggerland into memory. Today, when storms sweep across the North Sea, the waves churn above valleys where hunters once walked. Ships sail across the paths where mammoths once roamed. Beneath the waves, the bones remain, the trees remain, the land itself remains, buried but not destroyed. It is there, hidden, waiting to be remembered. Doggerland is not a myth, nor a dream, but a truth of Earth's history. A land that lived, a land that flourished, a land that vanished. Its story is written in the silence beneath the sea, in the artifacts drawn from the depths, in the pollen preserved in layers of sand. It is written in us too, in the memory of ancient floods, in the stories of lands lost, in the knowledge that the world is always changing. As we drift deeper into this story, let us walk softly across the plain once more. The air is cool, the rivers murmur, the grasses bend in the wind. Beneath our feet, the land is alive, vibrant, unknowing of its fate. Ahead lies the long unfolding of time, the seasons of life, the rising of waters, the slow vanishing of a world. But for now, Doggerland lives, and we live within it, carried into its silence, listening to the whispers of a land beneath the waves. The land spreads wide before us, a world of quiet abundance. From the high ridges shaped by ancient ice, the view stretches across meadows, forests, and winding rivers. The ground underfoot is soft with grass, damp with the memory of glacial melt. In the distance, a ribbon of water flashes in the sunlight, curving gracefully through the plain. This is not a barren tundra, but a living country, fertile and green, waiting to be walked. Imagine the morning air here, cool and fresh, carrying the scent of damp soil and wood smoke. Mist rises from the marshes, drifting slowly above the reeds. Birds stir in the branches, their calls soft and scattered, breaking the silence of dawn. A herd of red deer grazes near the water's edge, heads lifting as the wind carries unfamiliar scents. Beyond them, wild horses move, as a single flowing shape, their hooves pressing patterns into the ground. This is Doggerland in its fullness, alive and breathing. The rivers are the lifeblood of this land. They weave through valleys and forests, drawing animals and people alike. Some are wide and powerful, fed by the steady melt of ice in the north. Others are narrow, gentle streams, threading their way through meadows and quiet groves. Along their banks, willow and birch take root, their roots sinking deep into the damp soil. The rivers carry fish in endless abundance, silver bodies flashing in the shallows, while beavers work tirelessly to reshape the flow, damming channels into still pools. Everywhere, life gathers at the water. Mammoths come to drink, their massive forms mirrored on the surface. Bison lower their heads to graze nearby, swishing their tails against insects. Wolves linger in the shadows, watching with patient eyes, waiting for weakness or carelessness. Waterfowl glide across the surface, wings rippling against the current. Insects hover above the reeds, their small movements catching the light. The river is not simply part of the land. It is the heart of it, the pulse to which all life here responds. Forests rise on the higher ground, patches of pine and hazel spreading across the plain. In the dappled light beneath the branches, the air is still and cool. Fallen leaves soften the ground, muffling footsteps. Mushrooms sprout from rotting logs, and wild berries cluster in the shade. Foxes weave silently through the undergrowth, their ears pricked for the faintest sound. Owls rest in the high branches, their eyes closed until the falling dusk stirs them awake. These woods are small compared to the vast forests that will one day come, but they are enough to shelter, to feed, and to sustain. For the people of Doggerland, this landscape is both home and guide. They move with the seasons, following the rhythms of the animals and the cycles of plants. In spring and summer, they camp near rivers, where fish are plentiful and game comes to drink. In autumn, they move toward the forests, gathering nuts and berries, hunting animals fattened for winter. In colder months, they seek sheltered places, building huts of wood, bone, and hide, their fires glowing against the long nights. They know this land in detail. They read the prints left in mud to follow a deer. They listen for the flight of birds to find water. They gather plants, not just for food, but for medicine, using roots and herbs to ease pain or cure sickness. They carve tools from antler, sharpen blades of flint, twist fibers into cord. Nothing is wasted. Every piece of the land has meaning. Every season brings its gifts. Their survival is not separate from the land, but interwoven with it, dependent on its patience and generosity. Picture a group of these people by a riverbank in the late afternoon. The fire crackles, its smoke drifting gently upward. One figure sharpens a stone blade, striking flakes of flint with careful precision. Another tends to a catch of fish, gutting and cleaning them before placing them to cook over the flames. Children watch, playing with sticks, imitating the work of their elders with laughter and curiosity. Across the water, a mammoth lumbers into view, its size immense, but its pace calm and unhurried. The people watch in silence, not with fear but with respect. They know the mammoth is both a creature of power and a source of life, should the hunt demand it. For now, they let it pass. The land is not still, though it seems peaceful. The rivers shift their courses slowly, carving new paths, abandoning old ones. Marshes expand and contract with the rains. Trees fall, and open clearings where sunlight spills in. Herds move restlessly, chasing grass and water. People adapt with these changes, moving their camps, adjusting their paths, weaving their lives into the fabric of the land's rhythm. There is no separation here between human and world. There is only one living whole, breathing and turning with the slow pulse of time. At night, when darkness falls across Doggerland, the land does not fall silent. Fires flicker in the distance, their orange glow reflected faintly on the water. Owls stir in the branches, their calls echoing through the trees. Wolves lift their voices in long, low howls that carry across the plain. Above it all, the sky opens vast and unbroken, filled with stars untouched by smoke or city light. Families gather close to their fires, sharing warmth and stories. Shadows dance on the walls of their shelters. The crackle of flames joins the chorus of night. And as sleep takes them, they rest, knowing the land will provide again when dawn returns. This is Doggerland as it was at its peak, a place of beauty and abundance, of endless possibility. It is hard to imagine, looking at the North Sea today, that beneath those waves lies a drowned world that once held such richness. But the land was real. Its rivers flowed, its forests grew, its people lived and dreamed and raised children beneath its wide skies. For thousands of years it flourished, and for thousands of years it seemed it would last forever. But nothing is forever. The warmth of the sun was slowly changing the world. The ice was melting, the sea was rising. And though Doggerland lived on for centuries, its fate was sealed. The land would not endure as it was. The rivers, the forests, the meadows, all were destined to slip beneath the waves. The story of Doggerland is not only one of life, but also of loss. Yet before that loss came, it was a world alive in every breath, a place that deserves to be remembered, even as it sleeps beneath the sea. The people of Doggerland lived close to the earth. Their lives were shaped not by walls or rulers, but by the turning of seasons, by the migrations of animals, by the paths of rivers. Each day began with the rising sun and ended with the quiet fall of night. And between those moments lay the work of survival, a rhythm steady and familiar. They built their shelters from what the land offered. Branches of birch and pine formed the frame, bent and tied together into domes or lean-tos. Over these, they stretched hides of deer or aurochs, heavy and weatherproof, keeping out the wind and rain. In some places, they dug shallow hollows into the ground, lining them with stone and wood to hold warmth more securely. Within these shelters, fires burned at the center, their smoke curling through small gaps left for air. Around the flames, families gathered, cooking, working, and resting in the glow of light against the long dark. Their tools were born from patience and skill. Flint, broken with sharp precision, became knives, scrapers, and spear tips. Antler and bone were shaped into awls, needles, and hooks. Fibers from plants were twisted into cord, sinew into bowstrings, reeds into mats and baskets. Nothing was wasted. The bones of animals became handles for blades. The hides became clothing. The tendons became ties. Each piece of the world was transformed into something useful, something to carry life forward. Food came from many sources, gathered with care. Rivers gave fish in abundance: pike, salmon, trout, caught with nets or spears, roasted over flames, or dried for later use. The forests offered berries, nuts, and roots, gathered in woven baskets and stored for leaner months. The plains gave deer and boar, their meat roasted or smoked, their skins cleaned and stretched for clothing. Birds were caught in snares, eggs collected from nests. Every season brought something new, and people learned to move with those cycles. Traveling light, never taking more than the land could give again. The hunt was both necessity and ritual. Groups moved together across the plain, following tracks pressed into mud, listening for the faint rustle of grass disturbed by movement. They worked as one, circling quietly, driving animals toward waiting hunters. When the strike came, it was swift and sure. Spears flew, arrows found their mark. The animal fell, and the people gathered around it not only with relief, but with respect. They carved the meat carefully. They took the hide, the bone, the sinew. They left little behind. And around the fire that night, as the smell of roasting meat filled the air, they told the story of the hunt to one another, voices low and steady, weaving memory into the smoke. Children grew within this rhythm. From an early age, they learned to gather berries, to weave reeds into baskets, to watch the skies for signs of weather. They played near the rivers, their small footprints pressed into the mud. Footprints that sometimes survive even now, uncovered by chance, preserved across millennia. They imitated the work of their elders, chipping at stones, bending sticks into bows, pretending at the roles they would one day take on in earnest. Laughter rang through the camps, a reminder that even in the struggle of survival, joy found its place. Nights were long, but not empty. Fires burned against the dark, their glow a center of warmth. Around them, stories were told. Some were memories of the day's hunt, others were older, tales passed down across generations, myths of animals, of spirits in the rivers, of stars that watched from above. No words of these stories remain for us, but their echoes linger. For the people of Doggerland, story was as essential as fire, a way to explain the world, to carry meaning, to give children a place within the vastness of the land. The land itself was their constant teacher. They read the signs of the sky to know when rains would come. They listened to the call of geese to mark the seasons. They watched the flowering of plants, the rise and fall of rivers, the shifting of winds. Every detail mattered. Every sense was tuned to the quiet language of the world. They lived not apart from nature, but within it, part of a larger whole that guided their steps. Even their sleep was touched by the land. At night, with bodies wrapped in furs, the sounds of the plain drifted around them, the hoot of owls, the distant bark of foxes, the howl of wolves carried on the wind. Sometimes the trumpeting of mammoths echoed faintly, a reminder of the giants that still walked beside them. Dreams blended with these sounds, weaving the voices of the night into memory. In the morning, as the first light touched the horizon, they woke to another day, another cycle of gathering, hunting, building, and resting. It is easy for us to imagine these lives as harsh, but they were also full. The people of Doggerland did not see themselves as poor, nor as desperate. They had what they needed: food, shelter, warmth, companionship. Their world was not a struggle against nature, but a partnership with it. In their eyes, the rivers, the forests, and the plains were gifts, and their task was to live in balance with them. That balance was fragile, though, and always shifting. For now, Doggerland still held together, still stretched wide beneath the sky. Its rivers continued to flow, its animals to roam, its people to thrive. But the changes had already begun. The sea was rising, drop by drop, tide by tide. To the people, it was barely noticeable. A marsh deeper than before, a low path harder to cross, a shoreline pushed back a little farther each year. But over centuries, these small changes would grow, and the land they trusted so deeply would be reshaped forever. And so life continued, day by day, each moment seeming permanent, even as the slow tide of change crept closer. Fires burned, children laughed, hunters returned with their catch, families rested beneath the stars. The land provided, the people lived, and the world turned. This was Doggerland in its fullness, not yet lost, still alive, still breathing, still waiting to be remembered. Spring begins quietly on the plain. The air softens, the ground thaws, and new life rises from the soil. Rivers swell with meltwater from the distant ice, their currents faster, their banks overflowing into fresh marshes. Across the meadows, flowers bloom in scattered colors, small bursts of yellow and blue against the pale grass. Birds return, their calls filling the dawn, weaving sound into the stillness. People wake earlier, drawn outside by longer days, and their camps stir with movement as fires are lit and tools prepared. For the people of Doggerland, spring is a time of gathering and abundance. Nets are cast into rivers alive with fish, making their way upstream. Children pick the first tender shoots and roots, soft and easy to chew after the hunger of winter. Hunters follow the red deer, whose herds swell with new life, their paths cutting across the plains. Every sight, every sound tells them the same story. The land is alive again, generous and renewed. Summer brings warmth and long light. The days stretch far into evening, the sun lingering above the horizon. Meadows glow with tall grasses swaying in the breeze. Forests deepen in green, thick with leaves and alive with insects humming in the still air. Along the rivers, people move more often, fishing, gathering berries, repairing shelters. Children splash in the shallows, their laughter carried with the sound of water. Hunts are longer now, following wild boar and deer that roam in abundance. Fires burn less for warmth and more for cooking. Smoke drifting in lazy curls against the soft blue of the sky. The people rest beneath trees at midday, their bodies stretched in the shade, listening to the quiet drone of bees. They tell stories to pass the time, stories that shift with each telling, shaped by memory and imagination. Summer is a season of ease, though not without work. The land gives freely, but it must still be read carefully. A sudden storm can flood a camp. A dry spell can empty a river of fish. The people know these risks, but they move with them, adjusting, flowing like the rivers themselves. Autumn arrives with a change in the air. Winds grow cooler, the sun sinks earlier, and the colors of the land deepen. Leaves shift to gold and brown, falling in slow spirals to carpet the forest floor. Nuts and berries ripen, heavy on their branches, waiting to be gathered. The people collect them in woven baskets, storing what they can for the lean months ahead. Animals too prepare. Deer grow fat and heavy, their antlers full and sharp. Birds gather in flocks, their wings flashing as they take to the sky, beginning their long journeys south. Autumn is a season of hunts and harvest. The people move with urgency, knowing that winter is near. Hides are prepared, stretched and dried. Meat is smoked over low fires, preserved for the months when fresh game will be harder to find. Shelters are strengthened against wind and cold, gaps sealed with clay and branches. In the evenings, the air is rich with the smell of roasting meat, of nuts cracked open, of smoke drifting low and steady. Around the fires, voices rise in song, carrying warmth into the growing dark. Then comes winter. The days shorten, the nights stretch long and heavy. Frost spreads across the ground, hardening the earth, stilling the rivers. The sky turns pale, the sun a faint glow, distant and cold. Snow drifts in from the north, covering the meadows, quieting the forests. The plain becomes a place of silence, muffled beneath its blanket of white. The people gather close in these months. Fires burn brighter, their glow spilling against the walls of shelters. Food gathered and preserved in autumn becomes the lifeline of the community. Fish dried in the summer, nuts collected in the forest, smoked meat from the hunts, all are brought out, shared carefully, portioned with patience. Outside, hunts are harder, game scarcer, the air sharper with cold. But inside the shelters, warmth lingers. Families huddle together, telling stories, singing softly, listening to the wind move across the land. In this season, time seems slower. Days are measured by the firewood left, by the stores still remaining, by the rising and falling of the flames. Yet even here, life continues. Children play in the snow, chasing one another until their cheeks glow red. Hunters set traps for small game, their prints trailing away into the frost. At night, the stars blaze sharper, clearer, unhindered by haze. People look upward, tracing patterns, marking the slow wheel of the heavens. The sky becomes a calendar, a reminder that spring will come again. And so the cycle continues, year after year. Spring with its soft beginnings, summer with its ease, autumn with its harvest, winter with its stillness. Each season brings its gifts, and each season teaches its lessons. For the people of Doggerland, life is not a battle against these cycles, but a dance within them, moving in step with the world, trusting in its rhythm. Imagine standing on the plain through these changes. You see the meadows bloom, the forests deepen, the herds move with their seasons. You feel the warmth of summer sun, the cool bite of autumn wind, the silence of winter snow. Around you, people live with this same rhythm, their lives woven into the fabric of the land, their stories carried forward with each season. Doggerland is not just a place, but a cycle, a turning wheel of life that spins quietly beneath the wide and endless sky. The people of Doggerland carried their world in their hands. They shaped tools from stone, bone, and wood, each one born from patience and precision. Flint was their treasure, found in nodules hidden within chalk, broken open with skillful strikes. A single piece of flint could yield blades sharper than the edge of steel. Though it dulled quickly and had to be worked again, in careful hands, flakes were struck from the stone, long and thin, shaped into knives, arrowheads, scrapers. Each tool had a purpose, each purpose a place in survival. Bone and antler were carved into points for spears, hooks for fishing, needles for stitching hides. The curve of a red deer's antler could become a sturdy pick, used to dig into the earth or chip stone. From wood, they carved handles, bows, and shafts, polished smooth with care. Fiber from plants was twisted into cord, sinew into string, bark into baskets. Nothing was wasted. Every piece of an animal, every part of a plant, could become something useful. This was their ingenuity, not invention in sudden leaps, but endless adaptation, a deep knowledge of how to coax utility from the gifts of the land. Fire was at the center of life. It burned in shelters, flickered at campsites, smoked against the night sky. It was warmth in the cold, light in the dark, safety against predators. It was the heart of cooking, the force that turned raw meat into nourishment, that dried fish and smoked hides. To create fire was no simple thing. Flint struck against pyrite could send a spark into dry tinder, a spark coaxed carefully into flame. The people knew which woods burned hot, which smoldered long, which smoked enough to drive insects away. Around the fire, life gathered. Voices, laughter, silence, all drawn into its circle. Clothing was made with the same care. Hides of deer and boar, softened and scraped, became tunics, leggings, cloaks. Furs of fox and wolf were stitched into warmth for the winter. Sinew threaded through bone needles held the pieces together. In summer, lighter garments woven from plant fibers let air move freely. Feet were wrapped in leather, bound with strips of hide. Head coverings kept the rain at bay. Gloves shielded hands against cold. Every stitch was a link between survival and comfort, each garment carrying the mark of patient labor. Shelters rose where they were needed, light enough to be abandoned, strong enough to endure the weather. A frame of branches was set in a circle, bent inward to meet at the top, tied with cord. Over this, hides were stretched, layered to keep out rain, anchored with stones against the wind. Sometimes walls were woven from reeds, plastered with clay, sealed tight. In colder months, pits were dug into the ground, lined with wood, roofed with branches, then covered in earth for insulation. Inside, the space was small, warm, glowing with the light of fire. These homes were not permanent, but they were safe, and they held the laughter of families and the quiet of sleep. The land provided everything, but it demanded constant attention. Flint had to be found, hides prepared, fibers gathered, woodcut. Each task was familiar, passed down by memory and practice. Children watched their elders, learning which stones made the best blades, which plants yielded strong cord, which woods burned long through the night. Skills were not written, but lived, carried in the hands and repeated until they became instinct. Imagine sitting in a shelter at dusk. The fire burns low, casting shadows that flicker on the curved walls. A woman stitches a hide with careful hands, the needle flashing in the firelight. A man sharpens a flint blade, flakes falling at his feet. Children play beside them, weaving reeds into simple mats, imitating the work of their elders. The air smells of smoke and cooked fish, mingled with the faint musk of hides. Outside, the wind moves softly through the grass, carrying with it the distant cry of a wolf. Inside, the people are warm, safe, at peace in their small circle of light. These acts of daily life may seem small, but together they were the fabric of survival. Without fire, there was cold. Without tools, there was hunger. Without shelter, there was exposure. Every strike of flint, every stitch of hide, every spark of tinder was a step in the endless work of living. It was not drudgery, but rhythm. The same tasks repeated, the same skills sharpened, each moment bound to the next in an unbroken chain. Doggerland was not built in stone walls or monuments, but in these daily acts of resilience. Each tool chipped from flint, each fire kindled in darkness, each shelter raised against the wind was a monument in itself, a testament to the endurance of people who asked for little more than balance with the land around them. Their legacy is not one of kings or battles, but of quiet survival, of harmony with rivers, forests, and plains. And yet, as steady as this rhythm seemed, change was always present. The sea crept forward, invisible in the span of a single day, unstoppable across centuries. The rivers shifted their paths, the marshes grew wider, the forests began to thin at their edges. The people adapted, as they always had, but the balance was tilting. The land they depended on was slipping away, and though they could not yet see it, the tasks of their daily lives would one day vanish beneath the rising tide. When night fell across the plain, the world transformed. The light of the fire was the only boundary against the vast darkness, a fragile glow within an endless sea of stars. Above, the sky stretched wide and clear, unbroken by smoke or walls, filled with constellations that wheeled slowly across the heavens. For the people of Doggerland, this sky was more than backdrop. It was a map, a story, a living presence that guided their days and nights. They had no written words, but they carried stories in memory, passed from elder to child, from fire to fire. Around the flames, voices rose in soft rhythm, telling of how the rivers came to flow, how the animals were born from the earth, how the sun and moon moved in endless chase. These were not entertainment alone, but explanations, a way to understand the mystery of life around them. The stars above were woven into these stories, lights that marked the passing of seasons, reminders of when the deer would move, when the fish would return, when the snows would fall. The animals, too, were not just prey or neighbors. They were spirits, companions, teachers. The mammoth, vast and slow, may have been seen as a keeper of strength, a symbol of endurance. The red deer, graceful and alert, a guide through the forests and meadows. The wolf, fierce and loyal, a presence to be respected, perhaps feared, but never dismissed. Each hunt was more than survival. It was an encounter with a living spirit, a transaction of life. To take the life of an animal was to enter into a balance, to give thanks, to show respect. Though no prayers of theirs survive, the care with which they used every part of an animal tells us that reverence was there. Rivers and lakes held their own power. Water was life, but it was also mystery. It carried fish, it quenched thirst, it reflected the sky. Its depths held shadows unseen, movements unknown. Standing on the banks at night, watching the stars mirrored on the surface, one might believe the river connected two worlds, the land above and something deeper, hidden below. Offerings may have been made there, tokens dropped into the water. A carved tool, a fragment of bone, a gesture of respect to whatever spirits move beneath the ripples. Fire, too, was more than tool. To spark flame from stone was to summon light from nothing, to hold the power of the sun in human hands. Around it, people gathered, safe from cold and darkness. Its crackle and glow must have seemed alive, shifting, whispering, consuming, transforming. Fire took wood and left only ash, a reminder of life and death, of change that could not be reversed. It was a symbol of both protection and danger, a force to be treated with care. The land itself breathed with meaning. Hills stood like guardians, marshes whispered with hidden life, forests loomed with mystery. In the silence of deep woods, footsteps softened, voices hushed. Shadows moved easily there, real and imagined. Perhaps they saw spirits in the trees, faces in the bark, eyes watching in the darkness. The wind through branches was a voice, the rustle of reeds a message. The earth was not empty, but filled, alive with presence. In dreams, these beliefs deepened. Sleep was not only rest, but a crossing into another place. Lying beneath firs, listening to the cries of wolves or the hoot of owls, the people dreamed of hunts, of animals, of journeys beyond their reach. Dreams might have been seen as messages, as visions from the unseen world. Elders may have told of dreams that guided a hunt, that warned of storms, that explained sickness or health. In dreams, the world was boundless, and the line between real and imagined was thin. We cannot know their exact stories, but we can feel their shape. Every human community, across time and place, has sought meaning, has looked to stars, animals, fire, and water for answers. Doggerland was no different. Its people lived close to the cycles of nature, and in those cycles, they must have seen reflections of themselves. Birth, growth, death, return. These rhythms echoed in their lives, in the land, in the sky above them. Picture a night in Doggerland. The fire glows at the center of a small circle of people. Sparks rise into the air, carried upward until they vanish into the stars. An elder's voice speaks low and steady, telling of how the great rivers were carved by a giant's hand, how the deer once spoke to humans, how the stars are the eyes of ancestors watching from above. Children listen wide-eyed, the flicker of flame mirrored in their eyes. Adults nod slowly, familiar with the story but comforted by its telling. The night deepens, the voices fade, and sleep takes them one by one. Above them, the stars wheel on, silent and eternal. This inner world gave shape to their days. It told them who they were, where they belonged, how they should act toward the land that sustained them. Without temples, without written words, without monuments of stone, they carried their beliefs in memory, in practice, in respect shown to animals, in stories whispered beside firelight. Doggerland was not only a land of rivers and forests, but a land of spirit, alive in the imagination of its people, woven into every breath of wind, every flicker of flame, every shadow cast by the moon. Change did not come with thunder or roar, but with silence. The people of Doggerland woke each morning to the same wide sky, the same rivers, the same forests. Yet beneath that familiar rhythm, the world was shifting. Ice far to the north was melting, sending rivers of water surging into the seas. The ocean, unseen at first, was rising drop by drop, tide by tide, and the land began to feel its slow breath. A marsh that had always been firm underfoot grew softer, deeper, harder to cross. A river that had once flowed clear and narrow spread wider, flooding its banks, carving new channels through the soil. Valleys that had once been meadows grew damp, then wet, then still pools where reeds rose and frogs sang. These were not sudden changes, but patient ones, so slow that no single day revealed them. Yet over years, and then generations, the shape of the land was redrawn. Forests began to thin at their edges, drowned where the water crept higher. The roots of birch and pine stood in standing water, leaves yellowing, branches weakening until they fell into the marsh. The people watched as familiar groves grew smaller, as new patches of reeds and pools took their place. They adapted, as they always had. They moved their camps to higher ground, followed game to drier meadows, fished more often in the swollen rivers, but the land they had known was shifting, and no adaptation could halt that slow tide. Animals moved with the change. Deer found new paths away from waterlogged ground. Wild horses gathered in open plains where the grass remained. Beavers thrived, their dams spreading water even further, reshaping channels into winding pools. Birds filled the wetlands, feeding in abundance, their cries echoing in places that had once been silent. For some, the rising water was loss. For others, it was opportunity. Life adapted, always in motion, always reshaping. The people may have noticed these patterns. They would have remembered places where they once camped that now lay underwater. They would have spoken of rivers that ran deeper, of valleys that had changed. Around their fires, perhaps elders told of how the land had been before, how meadows stretched farther, how forests grew, where now the marshes spread. The younger ones may have listened with disbelief, unable to imagine the world as it once was, just as we now struggle to imagine it beneath the sea. Storms, too, grew more powerful. Winds howled across the plain, driving rain into sheets that flooded low ground. Rivers swelled with sudden force, carving new paths in a single night. Camps were abandoned when fires drowned, when water pushed into shelters. Yet still the people endured, moving to higher ground, rebuilding, waiting for the land to dry. The storms passed, and life continued. But each storm left its mark, another piece of the land lost to water. On quiet nights, standing near the water's edge, they may have noticed the sea itself drawing closer. What had once been distant now crept inland, tides licking higher against the shore, waves reaching where they had not before. At first, it must have seemed unremarkable. The sea was always there, always shifting with storms and seasons. But over centuries, its reach was undeniable. What had been land became coast. What had been coast became sea. The plain of Doggerland began to fragment. Low valleys filled, becoming wide estuaries. Meadows shrank into islands, patches of high ground rising above water that spread ever wider. The rivers, once united in their path, were pulled apart, spilling into a growing sea that claimed their mouths. From above, had we looked then, we would have seen the land breaking into pieces. The solid bridge between Britain and Europe thinning into scattered fragments. But for the people who lived there, it was a gradual fading, a land slipping quietly away. Yet even as the waters rose, life endured. Camps still smoked with fire. Children still played along the banks of rivers, though those rivers were wider than before. Hunters still followed herds across the plain, though the herds were pushed into smaller spaces. Gatherers still collected berries and nuts, though the forest had shifted inland. To live in Doggerland was always to adapt, to move with the land's changes. And so they did, even as the shape of their home unraveled. There must have been grief in this loss, though no words of theirs remain to tell us. Imagine returning to a place where your family once camped, only to find it gone beneath water, reeds rising where your fire once burned. Imagine trying to walk a familiar path, only to find it cut off by a widening marsh, your footprints erased by water. These moments would have carried weight, stories passed to children about how the land used to be. In their voices, perhaps sorrow, perhaps acceptance, perhaps only wonder at the power of the world around them. For us, Doggerland feels sudden, a land drowned, lost, forgotten. But for those who lived it, the end was a slow rhythm, measured not in years, but in generations. A little more land gone each season, a little more water where grass once grew. So slow that daily life could continue, so steady that people adapted again and again. And yet, across centuries, the land slipped away, one meadow at a time, until what had been vast was reduced to fragments, until what had been home was claimed by the sea. For generations, the waters crept forward with patience, rising quietly, erasing meadows one by one. But sometimes, the changes came not with silence, but with sudden force. The people of Doggerland, used to slow rhythms, would have known the power of storms, the violence of floods, the fury of water when it rose without warning. Winds swept in from the west, carrying clouds heavy with rain. The sky darkened, the air grew tense, and then the storm broke. Rain fell in sheets, pounding the ground, swelling the rivers. Lightning split the sky. Thunder rolled across the plain like the voice of giants. Fires drowned, shelters shook, water spread across the low ground. Families huddled together, waiting for the storm to pass, knowing that when the sun returned, the land would not be the same. Storms carved new paths into the soil, filling hollows with water, stripping away banks of rivers. Trees were torn from their roots, left scattered in the marshes. The sea, driven by the wind, pushed further inland, waves crashing where none had before. These moments were terrifying, yet also reminders of the power that always lingered at the edges of their world. But one event rose above all others, an event remembered in science, though not in words: the Great Wave. Far to the north, beyond the site of Doggerland, a vast section of the seafloor collapsed in what we now call the Storega Slide. The earth itself shifted, sending shock through the waters, and from that motion a wave rose, tall and relentless. It traveled southward, crossing the sea with a speed and power no one could have foreseen. For the people of Doggerland, there was no warning. Perhaps the ground trembled first, a shudder felt underfoot. Perhaps the sea drew back, strange and sudden, exposing the seabed where fish flopped helplessly. Then, the horizon darkened, not with storm, but with a wall of water rushing closer. The waves struck with unstoppable force, crashing over coasts, sweeping across low valleys, drowning forests, scattering everything in its path. Imagine standing on the plain as the water surged. A roar filled the air, louder than thunder, deeper than any storm. Trees splintered, animals fled in panic, fires hissed and vanished. Camps were torn apart, shelters lifted and carried away. Families clung to one another, swept in the current, their voices lost in the roar. The wave rushed inland, then pulled back, leaving silence in its wake. Silence broken only by the cries of survivors and the settling of water where land had been. The great wave did not erase Doggerland in a single stroke. The land endured for centuries after, but the memory of that day must have lingered in the minds of those who saw it. Stories may have been told around fires, stories of the sea's anger, of spirits rising in the water, of land taken and never returned. Children may have listened in fear, looking out at the coast with new caution. The wave was not only disaster, it was a lesson, carved into memory, that the land was fragile, that the sea held power greater than any fire or spear. After the waters withdrew, life continued. People rebuilt, moving to higher ground, shaping new shelters. Animals returned, rivers settled, forests regrew. But the scars remained. Valleys filled with water, meadows turned to marsh, familiar places vanished. The land was changed, not beyond recognition, but beyond denial. The people must have known then, more clearly than before, that their world was not permanent. And still, they endured. The strength of Doggerland's people was not in resisting change, but in flowing with it. They followed the animals to drier places. They fished in new waters. They built their homes on higher ridges. Each storm, each flood, each wave left them fewer choices, but still they adapted. Life went on, as it always had, though the horizon of their land grew smaller with each passing generation. Today, beneath the North Sea, traces of that great wave may still rest in the layers of sand and silt, silent evidence of the day when Doggerland shook. We cannot hear the voices of those who lived it, but we can imagine the silence after the roar, the stillness of a world forever changed. The plain that once stretched wide began to narrow. Year after year, the sea crept farther inland, swallowing valleys, spreading into rivers, pressing against the forests. Doggerland, once a vast bridge between lands, was breaking apart. From high ridges, the people could see it changing. What had been a single unbroken horizon now showed patches of water shimmering in the light. Marshes grew into lakes, lakes into inlets, inlets into open sea. The land was not vanishing all at once, but it was thinning, fracturing, unraveling. Meadows where children once played became islands surrounded by rising water. Hunters followed deer across paths that ended abruptly at new shores. Forests drowned at their edges, their trunks standing like ghosts in the shallows. Rivers that once joined together now poured directly into the encroaching sea. Their mouths widened into estuaries. Slowly, quietly, Doggerland was breaking into pieces. For the people, these changes were undeniable. Camps that had been safe for generations became impossible to return to. Footpaths that connected one place to another disappeared beneath the water. The wide plain that had once joined Britain to Europe shrank until only scattered patches of high ground remained. Islands in an ever-expanding sea. Families moved inland, seeking higher ridges, seeking stability in a land that shifted beneath them. Still, they adapted. Where rivers had grown wider, they built rafts of wood and reeds, pushing themselves across with long poles. Where marshes blocked their paths, they found ways around, skirting the edges, moving more slowly, but still moving. Fishing became more important. Nets cast into waters that spread where meadows once lay. Shells and bones left behind tell us that they gathered food not only from land, but increasingly from sea, shifting their diets, reshaping their ways. But with every adaptation came loss. Old camps were abandoned, left to the water. Graves were swallowed, fires drowned, landmarks erased. To the people, each loss may have carried memory. A place where a child was born, a hunt succeeded, a story told. To return and find it gone beneath the sea must have felt like more than change. It must have felt like the earth itself forgetting them. The animals, too, felt the shrinking land. Herds that once roamed freely across the plain found themselves pressed into tighter spaces, their paths cut off by widening waters. Some moved inland, retreating to higher ground. Others vanished altogether from Doggerland, unable to survive the shifting world. Wolves followed the deer, leaner now, hungrier, their howls carrying across narrower plains. Birds gathered along new coasts, feeding in the shallow waters that replaced meadows. Life endured, but the balance was breaking. On quiet evenings, standing at the edge of these new shores, the people must have felt the change deeply. Where once they had seen land stretch unbroken to the horizon, they now saw water, endless and restless. Where once fires burned across the plain, smoke rising in scattered dots of light, they now saw only waves, reflecting the stars above. Their world was not gone yet, but it was smaller, and it grew smaller with each passing season. The elders may have told stories of how the land had been, of how wide it stretched, of how rivers once flowed across valleys now drowned. Children may have listened with disbelief, unable to imagine a Doggerland so vast. To them, the smaller, fractured land was all they knew. Their memories held only the islands, the marshes, the narrowing horizon. The past was a story, not a lived truth, slipping further from reach with every year the sea advanced. Still, life went on. Fires burned on the high ground, Voices rose in song. Laughter carried across the water. People continued to hunt, to fish, to gather, to raise children. But always, at the edges of their days, the sea pressed closer, whispering of a future when even these last ridges would be taken. The land that had seemed eternal was in its final season, though those who walked it could not have known how little time remained. To us, looking back, it feels like a tragedy. A vast world drowned, its memory hidden beneath waves. But to them, it was simply life, another change in a long chain of changes. They adapted, they endured, they survived for as long as they could. And when the last forest fell, when the last meadows drowned, when the last camp was abandoned, they carried their memories inland, leaving Doggerland behind not in silence, but in story. Families moved inland, seeking higher ridges, seeking stability in a land that shifted beneath them. Still, they adapted. Where rivers had grown wider, they built rafts of wood and reeds, pushing themselves across with long poles. Where marshes blocked their paths, they found ways around, skirting the edges, moving more slowly, but still moving. Fishing became more important. Nets cast into waters that spread where meadows once lay. Shells and bones left behind tell us that they gathered food, not only from land, but increasingly from sea, shifting their diets, reshaping their ways. But with every adaptation came loss. Old camps were abandoned, left to the water. Graves were swallowed, fires drowned, landmarks erased. To the people, each loss may have carried memory, a place where a child was born, a hunt succeeded, a story told. To return and find it gone beneath the sea must have felt like more than change. It must have felt like the earth itself forgetting them. The animals, too, felt the shrinking land. Herds that once roamed freely across the plain found themselves pressed into tighter spaces, their paths cut off by widening waters. Some moved inland, retreating to higher ground. Others vanished altogether from Doggerland, unable to survive the shifting world. Wolves followed the deer, leaner now, hungrier, their howls carrying across narrower plains. Birds gathered along new coasts, feeding in the shallow waters that replaced meadows. Life endured, but the balance was breaking. On quiet evenings, standing at the edge of these new shores, the people must have felt the change deeply. Where once they had seen land stretch unbroken to the horizon, they now saw water, endless and restless. Where once fires burned across the plain, smoke rising in scattered dots of light, they now saw only waves, reflecting the stars above. Their world was not gone yet, but it was smaller, and it grew smaller with each passing season. The elders may have told stories of how the land had been, of how wide it stretched, of how rivers once flowed across valleys now drowned. Children may have listened with disbelief, unable to imagine a Doggerland so vast. To them, the smaller, fractured land was all they knew. Their memories held only the islands, the marshes, the narrowing horizon. The past was a story, not a lived truth, slipping further from reach with every year the sea advanced. Still, life went on. Fires burned on the high ground, voices rose in song, laughter carried across the water. People continued to hunt, to fish, to gather, to raise children. But always, at the edges of their days, the sea pressed closer, whispering of a future when even these last ridges would be taken. The land that had seemed eternal was in its final season, though those who walked it could not have known how little time remained. To us, looking back, it feels like a tragedy. A vast world drowned, its memory hidden beneath waves. But to them, it was simply life, another change in a long chain of changes. They adapted, they endured, they survived for as long as they could. And when the last forests fell, when the last meadows drowned, when the last camp was abandoned, they carried their memories inland, leaving Doggerland behind, not in silence, but in story. The silence that followed was vast. Waves washed over meadows where children once played, forests where hunters once tracked deer, fire pits where families once gathered. The land that had been full of voices, laughter, footsteps, and songs fell quiet, its sounds replaced by the rhythm of the sea. Beneath the waves, the bones of animals rested in the soil, the trunks of trees lay in the mud, the tools of people slept unseen. Doggerland did not vanish completely. It only sank into silence, wading beneath the water. From that day onward, the North Sea spread where Doggerland had been. Britain was no longer bound to Europe, but stood apart as an island, shaped not by walls, but by the rising tide. The people carried on inland, adapting once more, finding new rivers, new forests, new lands to call home. But in their stories, perhaps, the memory of Doggerland lingered. A tale of land lost, of sea that claimed what once seemed eternal. We cannot know their last words, their last glances back at the horizon. We cannot hear the voices of farewell, but we can imagine the weight of that silence, the slow acceptance that the land they had known for generations was gone. Doggerland passed not with a single moment, but with centuries of change, ending finally in a sea that remembers it still. When the last fires went dark, Doggerland did not vanish. It slipped beneath the surface, hidden but not destroyed. The sea rolled over it, waves spreading across meadows, forests, and rivers, sealing them away in silence. What had once been filled with voices and footsteps became still, the rhythm of life replaced by the steady pull of tides. Yet beneath the water, the land endured, sleeping quietly, its memory preserved in the soil. Trees that had once swayed in the wind now lay rooted in mud, their trunks darkened, their branches broken, but their forms still whole. In places, entire forests were drowned, the peat swallowing them, preserving them for thousands of years. Bones of animals rested where they had fallen, the tusks of mammoths, the antlers of deer, the jaws of wolves. Some lay in marshes, buried in silt, others in riverbeds, hardened into fossils. They were not erased but kept, waiting. The tools of people too remained. Flint blades dulled by time, broken spear tips, scrapers polished from use, antler picks abandoned in the soil, fragments of baskets, carved wood, the faint imprints of footprints pressed into clay and sealed by water. These were not monuments of stone, but they carried memory just as strong. Each one whispered of hands that shaped it, of lives that depended on its edge, of people who once walked freely across the land, where now the sea is wide. The sea did not destroy these traces, it protected them. Sand and silt settled gently over them, covering them layer by layer. Without the air to decay them, without the sun to wear them, they rested undisturbed. For centuries, for millennia, they lay beneath, untouched, while above the surface storms raged and ships passed, unaware of what lay below. Doggerland became not only lost, but hidden, preserved in silence. Fish swam where deer once grazed. Shells spread across riverbeds that no longer flowed. Seals rested on sandbanks that had once been meadows. The sea claimed Doggerland, but in doing so, it kept its memory intact. Even now, when storms churn the seabed, pieces of that memory rise again. Fishermen draw them up in nets. A tusk smooth as ivory, an antler sharpened into a tool, a piece of bone carved by human hands. Each fragment is a voice returned, a reminder that beneath the restless sea lies a world that lived. We imagine Doggerland as gone, but in truth, it is still there. Its valleys remain beneath the water, carved by ancient rivers. Its ridges still rise in the darkness, now hidden reefs and banks. Its forests lie buried, trunks locked in peat, leaves preserved in layers of silt. Even pollen rests there, tiny grains carried by wind and water, sealed in the seabed. To scientists, these grains are stories, telling of the plants that once covered the land, of the seasons that once turned above it. Doggerland endures, though unseen. For thousands of years, no one remembered. Generations passed, cities rose, kingdoms fell, and still the sea covered its secret. Ships crossed overhead, wars were fought along its coasts, but beneath, Doggerland slept on. Only in recent centuries, when people began to look deeper, did the memory return. Nets brought up strange bones, not from whales or fish, but from mammoths and deer long gone. Pieces of flint appeared, shaped in ways no wave could shape them. Slowly the truth emerged. There had been land here, and life upon it. To imagine Doggerland now is to imagine silence beneath water. A silence filled not with emptiness, but with presence. The bones of animals resting in mud. The tools of people lying where they were dropped. The forests waiting in the dark. Each one a whisper. Each one a fragment of a world both lost and preserved. The sea took Doggerland, but it did not erase it. It holds it still, cradled in its depths, waiting for us to listen. For centuries, Doggerland lay hidden, its story unknown. Sailors crossed the North Sea, their ships rocking on waves, their nets sinking deep. They knew only the water, not the land below. Yet sometimes, when storms stirred the seabed, strange things rose to the surface. Nets caught bones larger than any known animal, tusks curved and ancient, pieces of wood dark and heavy, flint shaped in ways no current could carve. These fragments puzzled those who found them, whispers from a world no one remembered. Only slowly did the picture emerge. Farmers on the coasts found bones of mammoth buried in fields, washed inland by ancient waters. Fishermen brought up tools, shaped by hands, long vanished. Scholars studied these things and began to ask questions. Could there have been land where now there is sea? Could people have lived there? For a long time, the answers were uncertain, blurred between myth and science. But as knowledge grew, so did the evidence. In the 20th century, new tools gave clearer vision. Sonar, designed to map the seafloor, revealed ridges, valleys, and channels beneath the waves. What looked like empty water was revealed as landscape, a hidden world preserved in outline. Ancient rivers were traced, winding across the seabed, their paths still visible, though no water flowed in them anymore. High ground showed as banks and shoals, once hills above the plain. The shape of Doggerland began to reappear, not in sight, but in sound waves sent into the depths. Samples drawn from the seabed carried more secrets. Layers of peat held the remains of drowned forests, trunks and branches preserved in darkness. Within them, pollen grains survived, tiny but unbroken. Under microscopes, these grains told stories of the plants that once grew: birch and pine, hazel and alder, grasses and flowers. From pollen alone, scientists could rebuild the image of Doggerland's forests, its meadows, its marshes. What had been invisible began to bloom again in knowledge. Animal bones confirmed the picture. Mammoth tusks, reindeer antlers, aurochs horns, and the remains of wolves all pointed to a land alive with Ice Age creatures. Human tools spoke of families who lived among them. Flint blades, scrapers, arrowheads, picks of antler worn smooth by use. Each one a reminder that Doggerland was not empty, but filled with life, both wild and human. Piece by piece, Doggerland returned from silence. Not the land itself, it remains beneath the sea, but the memory of it, built from evidence, from fragments, from science. Today, maps show it clearly. A vast plain stretching from Britain to Denmark, from Norway to Holland, its rivers flowing together into a land now drowned. We can trace its valleys, see its hills, understand where forests once stood. The plain is no longer invisible. Its presence is marked, its boundaries known, its story told again. Yet even with all this knowledge, Doggerland remains mysterious. We can map its shape, we can study its soils, we can collect its bones, but we cannot step upon it as those people once did. We can only imagine, guided by science, filled in by memory. To know Doggerland is to see both truth and dream. The truth of rivers and forests revealed in data. The dream of laughter and firelight, drifting across a land that lives now only in imagination. The discovery of Doggerland reminds us of how fragile land is, how easily the sea can claim what seems eternal. It is not the only land lost to rising waters, but it is one of the most vivid, one of the most complete. In the quiet of its drowned forests, in the silence of its valleys, we are reminded of change, of time, of the endless rhythm of earth and sea. From the fragments left behind, science has begun to rebuild the lives of the people who once called Doggerland home. No written words remain, no carvings in stone, no monuments to mark their passing. Yet from the soil and bone, from tools and traces, a picture emerges, quiet but powerful. A reminder that beneath the waves were families, voices, and stories. The tools speak first. Flint blades, chipped with precision, show that these people understood their material intimately. They struck stones at the right angle, sending thin flakes flying, each flake shaped into a cutting edge. Each edge fitted to a purpose. Scrapers for hides, arrowheads for hunting, knives for carving wood or bone. Even the waste of this work tells us of skill. The careful strikes, the practiced hands, the knowledge passed from one generation to the next. Antler and bone tools speak just as clearly. Picks carved from red deer. Antlers suggest digging, perhaps for roots or shelters. perhaps for shaping wood. Awls and needles show that hides were not only worn, but tailored, stitched into clothing suited to the shifting seasons. Hooks carved from bone suggest fishing not only by hand, but by craft, the patient waiting by rivers and streams. These tools reveal more than survival. They reveal adaptation, resilience, the quiet artistry of lives lived close to the land. DNA adds another layer. In the remains of people from the Mesolithic, related to those who lived in Doggerland, scientists find echoes of ancient faces, darker skin, lighter eyes, an appearance unlike the people who would come later. Their DNA carries traces of diets rich in fish, of lives bound to rivers and coasts. It shows movements too, the mingling of groups across wide lands, the sharing of knowledge, the blending of families. In these fragments of code, the memory of Doggerland's people still breathes. Comparisons with other Mesolithic cultures help us imagine further. Across Europe, people of this time built shelters of wood and hide, hunted with bows and spears, gathered berries, nuts, and roots. They painted caves, carved figures, left footprints in mud. They buried their dead with care, placing tools or ornaments beside them, signs of respect, of love, of belief in something beyond. Though we cannot see the exact customs of Doggerland, we can sense their shape, mirrored in the lives of neighbors who shared the same time, the same challenges, the same closeness to nature. In the peat of the seabed, pollen tells us of their surroundings: birch and hazel, alder and pine, grasses spreading wide. This was their world: forests for hunting, meadows for grazing animals, rivers rich with fish. The people moved lightly across it, never staying long in one place, always adjusting to the cycles of food and season. They lived not in permanent settlements, but in camps, raised for weeks or months, then left behind as they moved on. Their paths wove across the land, like the migrations of the herds they followed, returning again and again to places that gave them life. Imagine them more closely now. A man kneels by the river, striking flint with sure hands, his children watching, imitating his movements with small stones. A woman tends to a fire, boiling roots in a pot of bark and clay, the steam rising fragrant into the air. Another figure scrapes a hide stretched between posts, the sound rhythmic, steady, preparing clothing for the colder months ahead. Laughter rises as children chase each other, their feet pressing small prints into the damp soil. A dog, lean and watchful, lingers at the edge of the firelight, waiting for scraps, loyal and alert. These were not nameless shadows. They were people as real as us, with fears and hopes, with joys and sorrows. They felt the warmth of the sun, the chill of winter wind. They comforted children. They mourned the lost. They shared stories that carried memory forward. Their lives were simple by our measure, but they were full, woven with meaning, carried by rhythm, bound to the land they called home. To walk in Doggerland was to walk in a world alive with connection. Every tree, every river, every animal held significance. To live there was to be part of that whole, not above it, not separate from it, but within it, a thread in the endless fabric of life. And though the sea has taken their land, the fragments they left behind still speak. In bone and flint, in pollen and DNA. Their presence endures, whispering through the silence, reminding us that beneath the water, people once laughed, once dreamed, once lived. When Doggerland slipped beneath the sea, its people carried no books, no carvings, no written words to preserve their memory. Yet human beings have always carried memory in another way, through story. Around fires, in the hush of night, voices passed along tales of the land, of its changes, of its loss. Those stories, repeated again and again, may have traveled beyond the last generation to walk its soil. And as centuries turned, they may have become the seeds of myths, echoes of a world drowned. Flood stories appear across cultures, from Mesopotamia to India, from Europe to the Americas. Tales speak of waters that rose, of lands that vanished, of people who fled. The details differ, but the rhythm is familiar. The world as it was, the waters that came, the survivors who told the tale. Could some of these stories be the long shadow of Doggerland's end? We cannot know for certain, but the possibility lingers, like the faint outline of land beneath water. Imagine families who had to leave the shrinking plain, moving inland, carrying their children, their tools, their fire. They may have told their descendants of the land that once was vast, of the waters that came slowly at first, then suddenly, with storms and waves. Those descendants, in turn, may have told the story again, shaping it into myth, giving it meaning beyond memory. In time, the story may have traveled far, its details shifting, its essence remaining. Beware the water, for it can take the land. In the myths of Northern Europe, there are whispers of lands lost beneath the sea, tales of fair countries drowned, of fertile fields swallowed by waves, of bells ringing still beneath the water. In the Netherlands, stories speak of villages claimed by the ocean, their church towers visible on calm days. In Britain, legends tell of cities beneath the waves, their ruins glittering in the depths. These may be inventions, or they may be echoes, fragments of memory passed down through millennia, faint but persistent. The memory of great floods would have been powerful. A single storm could erase a camp. A single wave could drown a valley. To witness the sea rising must have felt like watching the earth itself turn against you. Such an experience cannot help but find form in words, in stories told to children, in warnings to future generations. And when told often enough, those stories outlive the land itself. For the people of Doggerland, myth was not separate from life. It was the way life was understood. The river was not only water, but a spirit that gave fish and quenched thirst. The deer was not only food, but a guide through the forest. Fire was not only warmth, but a force alive and hungry. To speak of the sea rising would not have been to describe a natural event, but a spirit's anger, a god's will, a story to explain what no one could control. Over centuries, as the people moved inland, their myths traveled with them. The land they had lost remained in memory, reshaped in words. Perhaps they told of a time when the world was wider, when their ancestors lived where now the sea spread. Perhaps they told of a great wave that came without warning, sweeping away homes and families. Perhaps they told of spirits in the water, voices heard in storms, reminders of what had been taken. Even today, standing on the coasts of the North Sea, You can hear such stories. Villages long vanished are said to rest beneath the waves, their bells tolling faintly in storms. Lands once fertile are said to lie waiting, hidden just out of sight. The sea itself is treated with respect, with caution, for it is known not only as giver, but as taker. These are not the exact voices of Doggerland, but they may be distant echoes, carried through generations, reshaped but never silenced. Myth is memory made eternal. Doggerland's people left no stone monuments, no carved tablets, no temples to tell their story. But they may have left stories in the minds of their children, stories that lived on in words and song, in caution and reverence. Those stories became myths, and those myths may still linger in the tales we tell today. Faint reflections of a world beneath the sea. Today, ships cross the North Sea endlessly. Cargo vessels, fishing boats, wind farms rising from the shallows. The waters seem unbroken, a restless plain of waves stretching between Britain and Europe. Few who look upon it think of what lies beneath. Yet hidden under those waves is the shape of Doggerland, a landscape preserved in silence, known only through fragments pulled to the surface and maps drawn by sound. At the center of this memory lies Doggerbank, a vast sandbank that stretches for hundreds of kilometers. To the eye, it is only water, but beneath, it is high ground, the remains of ridges that once stood above the plain. Fishermen know it well, for its shallows hold fish in abundance. But they also know it for stranger catches. Nets pulled across its floor have brought up more than cod and herring. They have brought bones, tusks, tools, each one an echo from the world below. Imagine a fisherman hauling his net, expecting only the weight of fish, and finding instead the tusk of a mammoth, heavy, curved, ancient, or a piece of antler sharpened into a pick, still bearing the marks of a hand that shaped it thousands of years ago, or a fragment of human bone, washed from the seabed, lifted once more into air. These moments remind us that Doggerland is not gone. It is waiting, just beneath the waves, its memory caught in nets, its story rising again. Scientists study these finds with reverence. Each piece is catalogued, measured, tested. A fragment of wood tells of forests long drowned. A shard of flint reveals the angle of a strike, the patience of a maker. A bone carries the trace of DNA, a whisper of a face that once lived. Together, these fragments form a mosaic, each piece adding to the picture of Doggerland, each discovery a reminder that beneath the sea, the past endures. Sonar surveys add to this picture. Ships send sound into the depths, and the echoes return, drawing maps of what lies below. Valleys carved by ancient rivers appear in the data, winding across the seabed. Ridges show where hills once rose. Wide flats mark the places where meadows once stretched. Layer by layer, the plain reappears, not in sight, but in outline, a ghost drawn in sound waves, a landscape remembered by technology. Standing on the coast today, it is hard to imagine. The waves stretch endlessly, the horizon unbroken, the sea restless and vast. Yet only a short distance beneath lies a world that once was alive with footsteps and firelight. The bones of mammoths still rest in the mud. The trunks of forests still lie buried in peat. The tools of people still sleep in silence. Doggerland is gone, but not lost. It remains, waiting beneath the waves, a land both hidden and present. The sea itself seems to remember. On stormy nights, when waves crash against the shore and winds howl across the water, it feels as though voices linger within the roar. The land that lies beneath may be silent, but the sea above it carries an echo, a reminder of what it claimed. In calm weather, the surface glitters with peace, but beneath that peace lies history, long and deep. Doggerland is not forgotten by the sea. It is part of it now, folded into its depths. To us, Doggerland is a story of loss, of land claimed, of people forced to move. But it is also a story of endurance. Its memory survives not only in bones and tools, but in the knowledge we now hold, in the maps drawn by science, in the fragments carried up from the seabed. When we look across the North Sea, we are not looking at emptiness. We are looking at a vast plain hidden beneath, a reminder that the world has changed before and will change again. Doggerland is still there, beneath the waves, its valleys, its rivers, its forests preserved in silence. We cannot walk it, but we can imagine it. We cannot see it, but we can remember. In this remembering, it lives again, not as land beneath our feet, but as story, as memory, as the quiet truth that nothing is ever truly gone. Doggerland is not the only land the sea has taken, and it will not be the last. The earth itself is always in motion, its surface rising and falling, its climates warming and cooling, its waters advancing and retreating. To think of Doggerland is to think of a moment in this endless cycle, a single chapter in the vast story of change that shapes our world. Throughout history, seas have risen and fallen many times. During the ice ages, water was locked in ice, and coastlines stretched far beyond what we know today. Plains connected islands to continents. Rivers flowed across what is now ocean. When the ice melted, the seas rose, and those plains were drowned. Doggerland is one of the clearest examples, but similar stories lie hidden around the globe. Lands beneath the Black Sea, coasts submerged along India, villages swallowed by lakes in Africa. Everywhere, the line between land and sea has shifted, reminding us that the earth is not fixed, but fluid. To those who lived in Doggerland, the rising waters must have felt immense, perhaps overwhelming. Yet to the earth, it was simply balance restored, the return of water to the ocean, the reshaping of land into new forms. The rivers that once wound across Doggerland now sleep beneath the waves, but their valleys are still there, filled not with air but with salt water. The forests are gone, but their pollen still drifts upward when the seabed is disturbed. The animals are vanished, but their bones remain, telling their quiet story. Nothing is erased, only changed. This cycle continues even now. Around the world, seas rise inch by inch, creeping against coasts, threatening villages and cities. Islands shrink, shorelines move, storms carve away at land. What happened to Doggerland is not only past, it is present, it is future. The people who lived there adapted as long as they could, moving, shifting, surviving. Today we face the same truth. The land we call permanent is never truly permanent. It is always at the mercy of the waters, always part of a rhythm far greater than ourselves. To see Doggerland as tragedy alone is to miss this deeper truth. It was not only a land lost, it was a land that lived, that thrived, that gave life for thousands of years. It was a bridge between peoples, a home for animals and forests, a stage for firelight and laughter. Its drowning was not the end of its story, but part of it, woven into the endless cycle of earth and sea. What is lost in one form remains in another, buried in mud, preserved in silence, remembered in story. Imagine the world from above, over vast time. Ice spreads across continents, seas shrink, lands appear. Then the ice melts, seas rise, lands vanish. Again and again the pattern repeats. Mountains rise, rivers carve, forests spread, deserts grow. In this rhythm, Doggerland is a note, brief but beautiful, played once and then carried forward into memory. The earth forgets nothing. It changes, it reshapes, but it holds every moment within its endless turning. To walk the coasts of the North Sea today is to stand at the edge of this truth. Waves wash the sand, tides rise and fall, winds carry salt through the air. Beneath, the land rests, unchanged in its silence, still holding the stories of those who once called it home. The sea above whispers, restless and eternal, but the land below endures, waiting for us to listen. Doggerland teaches us not only about the past, but about ourselves. It shows that all things shift, that no horizon is fixed, that the ground beneath us is always part of a larger story. It reminds us that people have always adapted, always moved, always endured. And it tells us, in silence, that the sea will always come, as it always has, as it always will. Doggerland lives on, though not as it once did. Its forests no longer sway in the wind, its rivers no longer run clear across the plain. Yet in science, in imagination, and in memory, it survives, as present as the sea that covers it. Every discovery pulled from the seabed is a reminder. Every map drawn from sonar a window. Every story told about it a way of bringing it back into light. Scientists speak of it in careful detail. They study the bones of mammoths, the antlers of deer, the tools of people long gone. They take cores of soil from the seabed, reading the layers of pollen and peat like pages in a book. They trace the outlines of ancient rivers, map the hills that once rose above meadows, and mark the places where people may have camped. Piece by piece, they bring Doggerland back, not as land we can walk, but as knowledge we can hold. Imagination does the rest. To hear of Doggerland is to begin to picture it, to see in the mind's eye a plain where the sea now spreads. We imagine the forests, the animals, the fires burning in the dusk. We imagine the people, their laughter, their songs, their footsteps pressed into soft earth. We imagine the final retreat, the waters rising, the land slipping away. Even if we cannot stand upon it, we can feel its presence in our thoughts. In this way, Doggerland survives not only in fact, but in dream. It is a reminder that beneath every sea lies a hidden world, that every coastline marks a boundary, not of permanence, but of change. Where we see only water, there was once land. Where we walk today, the sea may one day flow. The memory of Doggerland invites us to look at the sea not only as surface, but as depth, as history, as a place filled with stories. For those who live along the coasts of the North Sea, the presence of Doggerland feels close. Fishermen know its fragments, pulled up in their nets. Archaeologists study its secrets, revealed in bones and pollen. Writers and artists give it life again in story and image. Even in the quiet of the shore, when waves lap gently against sand, it is possible to imagine that just beyond the horizon lies not only water, but the shadow of a land waiting beneath. The sea does not erase, it conceals. Beneath its surface are valleys that once echoed with rivers, ridges that once caught the morning light, forests where owls once called in the night. All of it remains, silent but real, a reminder that the world holds more than we can see. Doggerland is one of these reminders, vivid and near, close enough to feel in the wind that blows across the waves. To remember Doggerland is to honor those who live there. Their voices are gone, but their presence lingers in every tool, every bone, every trace preserved in the depths. They were people like us, walking, working, loving, enduring. Their land was lost, but their story remains, carried not only in science, but in the imagination of all who listen. In this way, Doggerland is not gone. It is here, beneath the water, within memory, within story. It asks us to look closer, to listen deeper, to see the sea not as boundary, but as veil, thin and temporary, hiding worlds beneath its restless surface. Stand now on the shore of the North Sea. The waves roll steadily, curling against the sand, retreating and returning again. The horizon stretches wide and empty, the water restless, the air filled with the sound of surf. To the eye, it seems only sea, endless and deep. But beneath this surface, hidden in silence, lies a land that once breathed with life. Close your eyes and listen. The rhythm of the waves becomes the rhythm of footsteps across meadows. The hiss of foam becomes the rustle of grass. The cries of seabirds overhead echo the voices of people faint but present, carried forward through time. For a moment, the sea feels thin, a veil drawn over a memory. You can almost see it, rivers shining in the light, forests rising on the ridges, smoke rising from distant fires. Doggerland, alive again in thought. Time flows like the tide. What once was land is now sea. What is sea now may one day be land again. Nothing is fixed, nothing is final. The earth is a living thing, changing, shifting, always in motion. Doggerland reminds us of this truth. Its loss is not only sorrow, but lesson. That the world is never still. That what we see as permanent is only temporary. That all things are part of a larger rhythm. The people of Doggerland did not leave monuments to themselves. They left no walls of stone, no carvings in rock, no temples to mark their passing. What they left was smaller but no less profound. Footprints pressed into mud, tools carved from flint, bones buried in soil. They left the memory of their fires, the echo of their laughter, the rhythm of their days. These traces, fragile yet enduring, are enough. They tell us that they lived, that they loved, that they walked the same earth we walk. The sea holds them now, as it will one day hold us all. Yet in holding, it preserves. In silence, it remembers. In stillness, it waits. Doggerland is gone from the surface, but not from the earth, not from memory. It is with us, as long as we choose to imagine it, as long as we listen to the whispers rising from beneath the waves. Stand again on the shore and look to the horizon. Beyond the water lies the shape of a plain long drowned, a land that lived, a land that thrived, a land that fell to the sea. It is not gone. It is there beneath the restless surface, beneath the silence. Doggerland endures, not in stone, not in earth, but in the memory we carry, in the story we tell, in the gentle truth that nothing is ever truly lost. The sea is both beginning and end. It is the place where rivers flow, where rain returns, where land dissolves into silence. It is patient, waiting beyond the horizon, pressing slowly against the shore. For Doggerland, the sea was always there, always watching, always ready to reclaim what had been borrowed during the age of ice. Imagine the passage of centuries as a single breath. Ice melts, rivers swell, meadows drown, the sea advances, and Doggerland shrinks. Families move inland, fires are abandoned, forests are lost. Then silence falls, waves covering what was once alive. From above, the plain vanishes, leaving only water. From below, the land remains, preserved in darkness. Time folds gently here. 10,000 years pass, yet the land is still there, only hidden. Its valleys remain carved, its ridges still rise, its rivers lie filled but unforgotten. Bones rest where they fell, tools lie where they were dropped, forests sleep beneath peat. The sea holds them all, not as ruins, but as memories, fragments of life waiting in stillness. We stand at the edge of this story, looking out across the waves. We know now what the people of Doggerland could not, that their land was temporary, that the sea would win in the end. Yet in their footsteps, in their tools, in their laughter around fires, there is no sign of despair. They lived fully, they adapted, they endured. They did not live as though their land was ending. They lived as though it was eternal, as though each day was its own gift. In this, they remind us of something simple, that permanence is not needed for meaning. Doggerland speaks in silence, but we can hear it if we listen. We hear it in the cry of seabirds, in the crash of waves, in the faint echoes that rise, when fishermen pull ancient bones from the deep. We hear it in the maps drawn by science, showing rivers and ridges beneath the sea. We hear it in our own imagination, when we close our eyes and picture forests swaying where now the tide moves. The land is gone, but its presence surrounds us. The sea is not enemy, not thief. It is simply the next chapter. It took Doggerland, yes, but in taking, it kept it safe, preserved in silence, hidden but not destroyed. The same sea that drowned the plain also guards it, holding its memory gently beneath the waves. One day, long after us, other lands will follow, other coasts will vanish, other plains will sink. The cycle will continue, as it always has. Doggerland is one name in a long list of places that remind us of this truth. When you listen to the sea, you listen to time itself. Each wave is a moment, each tide a generation, each storm an age. Doggerland's story is carried in those waves, not only as loss, but as part of the great rhythm that binds earth, water, and life together. So let the sea speak. Let its whispers drift across the night. Beneath it, a land waits, not forgotten, not gone, but sleeping. Doggerland endures, in silence, in story, In us, the sea moves endlessly. It rises and falls, breathes in and out, whispers against the shore. Each wave carries memory. Each tide is a reminder of what once was. Beneath its surface, Doggerland lies quiet, its forests sleeping, its rivers still, its meadows folded into silence. Close your eyes and listen. You can hear it. Not in words, not in sound, but in rhythm. The rhythm of footsteps long gone. The rhythm of fires crackling in the dusk. The rhythm of voices rising softly in the night. All of it still lingers, hidden beneath the tide, carried on the breath of water and time. Picture the plain as it was. The wide rivers gleaming in sunlight. The herds moving slowly across meadows. The forests dark and alive with birdsong. People gathering around fires, their laughter rising into the star-filled sky. This was Doggerland, alive and whole, a land of abundance, a land of rhythm. Now the sea moves above it, calm but restless, holding its memory within. Time has taken much, but it has not taken everything. The bones remain, heavy in the seabed. The tools remain, shaped by careful hands. The trunks of trees remain, sealed in peat. Even the pollen remains, fragile but enduring, telling us of flowers that once bent in the wind. These are the whispers of Doggerland, faint but clear, waiting for those who choose to listen. Imagine walking along the coast at night. The stars spread wide above you, the sea dark and endless before you. You listen to the waves, and in their rhythm you feel connection. Connection to those who walked here before, to those who lit fires where now only water spreads, to those who told stories beneath the same stars. The sea does not separate us from them. It joins us, carrying their memory forward, weaving their story into ours. Doggerland is not gone. It is here, beneath the waves, within the silence, within imagination. It is here in every fragment drawn from the sea, in every map traced by science, in every dream of land beneath water. It is here in the rhythm of the earth itself, in the endless turning of time. Let the waves carry you. Let their steady motion become breath, slow and calm. Let the story of Doggerland drift around you, not as loss, but as presence. The land sleeps, but its memory is awake. The people are gone, but their voices remain in echoes. The sea covers it all, but in covering, it holds, protects, preserves. And so the story continues, not in silence, but in the soft music of water against shore. Doggerland endures, in memory, in science, in imagination, in us. The sea has many voices. At times it is restless, waves tumbling, wind pulling at its surface. At times it is calm, glassy and still, reflecting the sky like a mirror. In both its moods, it carries the story of what lies beneath. Doggerland sleeps there, wrapped in silence, held in water's embrace. When the tide pulls back, it reveals its rhythm. Not the land itself, but the reminder of change. Wet sand darkens, shells glisten, driftwood rests where waves have left it. The smell of salt lingers in the air, and with it comes the thought of what the sea holds just beyond reach. A land forgotten, a land remembered. Close your eyes, and the sound of waves becomes the sound of time itself. Each crest a moment, each fall a memory. The sea is patient. It does not hurry. It does not forget. Beneath it, forests remain, their roots locked in peat. Beneath it, bones remain, cradled in mud. Beneath it, the marks of people remain, faint but true. The sea has taken Doggerland, but it has also preserved it. Imagine the plain again, the rivers winding across meadows, the deer grazing, ears lifting to the sound of wind. Fires glowing at dusk, smoke curling into the sky. Families gathering close, their voices soft, their stories flowing with the night. Then imagine the same place now, silent, waves rolling above, the plain hidden but not gone. Two worlds, one upon the other. The story of Doggerland is not only history, it is presence. It lingers here, in the rhythm of water, in the quiet knowledge that land lies beneath the sea. When you stand at the shore and listen, you are standing at the edge of two worlds, the one we see and the one we imagine. The boundary between them is thin as the line of the horizon, as thin as a single wave washing over the sand. Doggerland reminds us that nothing is fixed. Land becomes sea. Sea becomes land. People move, adapt, endure. The world changes always, and we change with it. What seems permanent is only momentary. What seems lost is only hidden. Time folds everything into itself, carrying it forward, carrying it back. Let the thought of this land be gentle. Let it drift through you like the tide, slow and steady. Let it soften the edges of the present, opening a space where memory and imagination meet. Doggerland is not gone. It is here, in the breath of the sea, in the whisper of wind, in the silence beneath the waves. And so the story continues, not with ending, but with presence. The land is lost, but the memory endures. The people are gone, but their voices linger. The sea has taken, but in taking, it has kept. Doggerland remains, quiet, patient, eternal. The sea holds its secrets quietly. It does not rush to reveal them. It waits, patient and unhurried, letting time fold layer upon layer of sand, keeping memory safe beneath. Doggerland rests there still, unseen but present, a reminder that the world holds more than our eyes can know. Listen to the water. Each wave carries a fragment of its story. The rise and fall of the tide is the breath of ages, steady, unbroken. The sea remembers, even when we forget. It has carried the voices of storms, the silence of calm nights, the weight of centuries. In its depth, Doggerland sleeps, a land within the sea, timeless and still. Imagine walking along the shore now. The air is cool, salt touches your lips, and the wind moves gently against your skin. The sound of waves fills the space around you, endless, repeating, soft. As you listen, you begin to sense the land beneath, as though the rhythm of the sea carries echoes of footsteps, laughter, voices long gone. For a moment, it feels close, as though you could step out across the water and find the meadows waiting, the rivers shining, the forests alive once more. Time is vast, and Doggerland is only one chapter within it. Yet it is a chapter we can still feel. It tells us of change, of movement, of the quiet resilience of life. It reminds us that the world has always been in motion, that what we call permanent is only a pause in a longer rhythm. The land we walk today may one day lie beneath the waves, just as Doggerland does now, and the sea that covers it may one day retreat again, revealing new land, new stories, new lives. Let this thought be calm, not fearful. The sea is not enemy. It is change. It is renewal. It is the endless turning of earth and sky. Doggerland's drowning was not only loss, it was transformation. A land gave way, but its memory endures, carried in silence, carried in story, carried in the slow whisper of the sea. As you breathe with the rhythm of the waves, let the story of Doggerland soften into stillness. Picture the forest beneath, quiet in the dark. Picture the rivers, their paths remembered in sand. Picture the tools, the bones, the fragments of fire left behind. All of them waiting, all of them held, all of them safe within the sea's embrace. The land is gone, but not gone. The people are silent, but not forgotten. The sea covers all, but it also keeps all. In this balance there is peace. In this rhythm there is rest. Doggerland endures, not as loss, but as presence, gentle and eternal. The sea drifts endlessly, its voice steady, its presence eternal. Waves rise and fall in quiet rhythm, as they have for thousands of years. Beneath them, Doggerland rests, its valleys silent, its forests sleeping, its rivers folded into stillness. The land is gone from sight, but not from being. It lingers, waiting, held in the depth of water and time. Think of the plain once more. Meadows stretching wide, grasses swaying in the breeze. Deer moving slowly, their heads lifting to scents carried on the wind. Fires glowing against the dusk. Families gathered in their circle of light. The sound of laughter carried softly into night. These moments lived, real and full, as present then as our lives are now. And though the sea covers them, they remain, sealed into the memory of the earth. Time has folded Doggerland gently, not erased, not broken, but hidden. Its shape remains on the seabed. Its traces remain in bone, in flint, in pollen too small to see, but vast in its story. Science gives us glimpses. Imagination gives us vision. Together, they let us walk again in a land the sea has taken, a land we can still feel in the rhythm of waves. As you listen, let the thought of Doggerland become softer, calmer. Picture the sea above it, not as weight, but as a blanket, covering the land in peace. Picture the forest beneath, quiet in darkness, safe in their rest. Picture the rivers stilled, but their paths still remembered in the sand. Picture the people's voices not lost, but echoing faintly in the hum of waves, carried forward into eternity. Doggerland is both past and present. It is history, but it is also presence, alive in the sea, alive in us. To remember, it is to feel connection, not only to a land long gone, but to the endless cycle of change that shapes us all. It reminds us that permanence is an illusion, that all things shift, that loss is not only ending but transformation. The waves move in, the waves move out. Breath rises, breath falls. In this rhythm there is peace. In this rhythm, Doggerland is remembered. Each tide is a whisper, each moment a memory, each silence a presence. Let it drift around you. Let it carry you. Let the sea hold you in the same way it holds Doggerland. Gently, endlessly, without hurry, without end. The waves continue steady and calm. They roll across the surface of the sea, just as they have for thousands of years. Beneath them, Doggerland rests, quiet, unmoving, eternal. The land is hidden, but its presence is here, felt in every tide, remembered in every whisper of the waves. Imagine lying on the shore, eyes closed, listening. The water moves in and out, slow and unhurried. The air is cool, carrying the scent of salt. Each sound drifts into the next, blending into a lullaby of sea and sky. Beneath that lullaby lies the story of a land, not lost, not forgotten, but waiting. Doggerland, the plain beneath the sea. Time is vast. Civilizations rise and fall. Kingdoms grow and vanish. Cities are built and crumble. Yet beneath it all, the sea holds its memory. Doggerland has slept for millennia, and it will sleep for millennia more. Nothing disturbs it but the gentle currents. Nothing moves it but the slow turning of the earth. In its silence, there is peace. Let that peace surround you now. Let the thought of Doggerland soften into stillness. Picture its meadows, wide and green, fading gently into water. Picture its rivers, shining in the sun, folding slowly into the sea. Picture its forests, standing tall, then resting quietly beneath the waves. The land has changed, but its essence remains, carried forward in memory, preserved in silence. Doggerland reminds us of impermanence, but also of endurance. The people who live there are gone, but their story endures. The land itself is hidden, but its shape remains. The sea has taken, but in taking, it has also kept. Nothing is truly lost. Everything becomes part of the greater rhythm, the endless turning of time. As the waves move, let your breath move with them, slow, steady, gentle. The sea rises, the sea falls, the land sleeps, the memory endures. You are part of that rhythm as the people of Doggerland were, as the sea itself is. And so the story rests, not with an ending, but with continuation. Doggerland remains beneath the sea, within imagination, within the quiet presence of the earth. It asks nothing but remembrance. It gives nothing but peace. It is there, always silent and eternal. Let the waves carry you now into calm, into stillness, into rest. Doggerland sleeps beneath the sea, and with it, you too may drift into sleep, carried gently by the rhythm of water, the rhythm of time, the rhythm of the earth itself.